Welcome to Project Recovery, the podcast all about recovery. I'm Casey Scott, your host. This is my co-host, Dr. Matt Woolley. Am I licensed, or do I have to say Dr. Matt every time?
No, you don't. You can just say that guy or whatever. It's not a rule.
Now,
they might be confused as to who you're talking to if you don't.
But what kind of doctor are you?
I'm a psychologist.
A clinical?
Clinical psychologist, yes, thank you.
All right.
PhD, not MD. You can't get meds from me.
Wow, that was almost a wrap. I like that.
Right?
Well, today we're going to be focusing on the aftermath of my DUI. I like to call this one planes, trains, and no automobiles.
No automobiles, man.
Not until 2020.
Uber.
Yeah. You know, I've
or Lyft. We're not promoting either one.
Here's what I found out last night, and this is my marketing brain, and I'm laying in bed because we've got Kelly Cardon, a DUI attorney, on the air today with us. We're going to talk to him in just a second. But I was thinking of this thing. I was like, take an Uber before you drink, or you'll take it if you get pulled over. Because
there you go.
I mean, that's the reality is that I should have taken an Uber when I was drinking, but I didn't. I chose to drive.
Look at it.
I got a DUI, and now I'm not going to have a license until October 3rd, 2020.
So that's 2 full years, right?
2 full years.
Yeah.
And I was actually, when I was in rehab, I got a letter from the court saying that they were going to take my license for 4 months. And so
that probably how did you react to that 4 months? I think at that point, what did that seem like to you?
It seemed like a very long time, but it seemed doable. It seemed palatable.
You can kind of see the end inside of 4 months, but it's a long time. Like I can't imagine really going without my license for 4 months. That would be really hard.
And a month of that was going to be while I was in rehab.
Okay.
And so I wasn't, able to drive anyways. And so it was really just going to be 3 months. And so I do the 45 days at Pinnacle. I get out, and I'm counting down the days. I mean, it was almost like one of those Christmas chains you do with your kids, the countdown to Christmas.
Oh, where you pull the chain off?
Yeah, every morning I'd wake up and go, one day closer, one day closer.
Yeah.
And if you know anything about me, I'm not much of a planner.
Really?
Yeah. I kind of like just to throw it up in the air and see where the chips fly or land.
Yeah, that seems like Casey to me.
But now I'm a very good planner, and we'll get to that in just a second. But it was a week before I was supposed to get my license back. And so I get the piece of paper out. I call the number at the bottom.
Pulling off the last few chains.
Yeah, I call the DMV. I go, hey, I'm upbeat. I'm cheerful. I'm like, hey, I'm getting ready to come here on Tuesday and get my license. There's a lot of times when you go to the DMV, they need all kinds of different forms. And if you don't have to do it, you have to go back. And I was going to get a ride there.
So you're trying to be prepared.
Be prepared. Yeah. And if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
There you go.
And so I call them up and I say, hey, I'm getting my license on Tuesday. I just need to know what I need to bring. And they go, well, what's your case number? And so look at the top of the paper, read her the case number. And she goes, is this Casey Scott? Yeah, this is Casey Scott. What do I need to bring? And she goes,
I think if the person at the DMV knows your name, that's probably not a good thing.
No. And so she goes, we've got something here that says you're not going to get your license back till October 3rd, 2020. And I was like, no, I got a paper right here. And they go, no, we got one here. Did you not?
Waiting for her to say psych?
Yeah. And she goes, did you not get it? And I said, no. I said, can you email it? And she goes, no, but you can come here and pick it up. And I was like, how am I going to get there? I don't have a license. I said, I'm going to just take your word for it. Can you just read it to me? And so she read it, and she goes, yeah. And she goes, it's October 3rd, 2020. And so then I get off the phone, and I call my DUI lawyer, Kelly Cardon, and I send him some text. And I'm going to find my text real quick here. And I said, hey, Kelly, I just called to get my driver's license back, and they said it was going to be 2 years, not 4 months. And he goes, you did lose it for 4 months on administrative suspension, i.e. the driver's license hearing. Because of the DUI conviction being second within 2 years, first being impaired driving, you lose it for 2 years with credit for 4 months. 0 you can do. Happy New Year. How's it going?
How's it going?
Yeah. And I went,
Kelly's changing the subject on you real fast.
Yeah, I was like, well, I just found out I lost my license for 2 years. It's not going great, but okay. So then I write back, I'm doing good. This was a little blow. Not enough to lose it over. What about a limited license after a year? He goes, you can't. No limited license until after 2 years is up. Only under certain circumstances. I'm sure I informed you of this back in the fall. It's set up to make you fail, so don't. And I wrote back.
Straightforward.
Yeah. And he did give me the thumbs up emoji.
Oh, well, that feels better.
Yeah. And so I write, I won't fail. I can't. So I can't get my license back for 2 years, right? He goes, well, 2 years minus the 4 months. And I go, right. Thanks.
And the smiley face emoji after that,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
So right now, I'm Ubering everywhere. I'm taking trains. I'm trying to organize my life, and it's just kind of maddening. But what I've figured out is he's right. You are set up to fail. And I can see why so many people would drive.
What does that mean to you, set up to fail? I think that would be good to expound on.
Well, let's bring Kelly Cardon in. Kelly, how you doing, buddy?
Doing well.
All right. So, Kelly, when you say the system's set up to let you fail, what do you mean by that?
Well, they just make it so much more difficult for you if you don't have your license. And we have I can go into a program a little bit later on this if you want. That
We'll do that in just a little bit,
Okay.
but let's talk about just being set up to fail right now.
Well, all of a sudden you've got twice as many obligations. You got to go to randoms, you got to go to counseling, you got to go to AA meetings, all the things that you were going in aftercare too. Mm-hmm. All of those things that you didn't have before. So now, if not twice as many, maybe 3 times as many obligations that you need a car to get to, or some kind of transportation.
Yeah, and so and that's what I'm kind of dealing with. And so I just yesterday I had to go take a UA test, which is
That's what a random is, right?
a random. And so every morning I wake up, I've got to call this line, and my color's brown. And it'll go, all right, if your color's brown, you report today between 10:30 and 5:30. Okay, now there's the first thing, 10:30 and 5:30. Okay, and if you've got a job,
That's kind of during work hours.
hours, and if you had to Uber to your job, do your job, Uber back to the UA, Uber back, and then Uber, you're almost working for free.
It adds up pretty quick. If you're Ubering every day, do you have any idea how much you've been spending approximately per week on?
So I've
on
done the
Ubers?
math because I don't have a car right now.
And I know you're trying to do like UTA as well, but
Well, that's why I call it planes, trains, and no automobiles.
Yeah.
Because I'm just and I'm bumming rides. I'm like a 16-year-old girl. I'm going,
I know.
hey, I'm sending texts out to the neighborhood. Is anybody going to the store? And I've got 3 kids, and I've got 2 of them in competition dance. And
you should just walk around with those middle schoolers that are wearing the Iron Maiden T-shirts, and they'll walk you around.
yeah, right.
They're all over the place.
You don't think that's going to be off-putting, right?
Okay, maybe not.
Yeah. And so, but he's right. You've got all these different obligations, and these are requirements. These aren't something that you can
Right.
go, I can't just call and go, hey, look, I can't find a ride. That's not their responsibility.
Right.
It's my responsibility. It's a directive from the court that I must do this. It's part of my probation. It's part of my parole. It's all of these.
Because of that inability to have easy transportation, you are at high risk of failing if you miss a random UA or one of these required meetings, right?
Yeah, and I've got job offers out there that want me to do marketing for them, which means I have to be able to drive around. Now, once again, throughout this podcast, I want you to grow with me and feel the pains as I go through them. I'm not asking for anyone to feel sorry for me, because I did this to myself. These are the consequences that I have to deal with. But what I want to let people know is that it does make it increasingly harder.
I think it's sobering
Yeah.
to realize for our listeners, what actually is entailed when you have a suspended license, which is very likely to happen, isn't it, Kelly, when you have a DUI?
Yes.
Kelly, when this all went down, and people would go to my Facebook. A lot of people would go there for support. A lot of people would go there and express frustration. And you heard this from more than one people that would say, well, this wasn't his first time doing it. And to that, I have to say, you're right. It wasn't the first time. What is the recidivism rate like this on a DUI? How often is it somebody gets one DUI and then doesn't get another?
These are some pretty ugly stats, right? It's usually 9 out of 10 will never repeat again. So you fit comfortably into that other 10%.
Okay.
So, and that 10% is, if you think about that, those are astonishing numbers. And of the 10% that does repeat, 93% of them will get a third.
93%.
And if it's within 10 years, that becomes a felony then, and they can go to prison. So,
and that's a whole other thing. I want to let people know that, Uber, Lyft, it is an amazing service. It really will save you.
Are there still taxis?
They're still taxis,
Okay, yeah.
and they've actually dropped their prices. Because trust me, I've checked it all out.
Yeah.
You know, but this will save you so much heartache. Now, I'm not telling you not to drink. I'm just telling you not to drink and drive. And what I want to tell people is that the long-term ramifications of a DUI can be staggering. Right now, this DUI has cost me, with my contract with the TV station and all other things, well over $150,000.
Yeah, easily. Is that fairly common, Kelly?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What do you have any idea of what's common if a person maybe is in 2 or 3 DUIs, dollar-wise, what that might end up costing them over time?
On a second DUI, it's typically going to be about $15,000 to $20,000, and then if you lose your job, and that doesn't include insurance if there's some insurance issues there too.
Yeah.
And that typically
Is losing insurance common?
Oh, yes. There's only a few companies that will write insurance for DUIs.
Okay.
You've got to get what's called an SR22, and it's a high-risk insurance.
Right.
And not only that, when I do get my license back, I'm required to have what they call an interlock service. And they put that on your car. And, Kelly, an interlock service, because I haven't seen one yet, I've heard of them, but it's basically a breathalyzer for your car.
Yes, and it controls whether you can drive the car or not. It'll prompt you to blow into it as you're driving down the freeway. So you've got to pull over to the side of the road or get on an off-ramp and blow into it. And the key is if you blow alcohol into it, you're not starting your car.
And I actually was in rehab with a kid who had an interlock system on his car that he just put on because he liked to drink and drive, and he knew that he didn't want to get a DUI and
great.
do this. So you can just do that. You can just put it on your car. Now it's like a subscription. So I think it's like anywhere from $60 to $80 a month. And if you blow into it 3 times, it'll lock it up, and then somebody has to drive out there, unlock it, and do it. So
Wow.
yeah, it's pretty technical, but that's not the only system out there. And we're going to talk about a program that Weber County's doing in just a little bit, getting into more of that. But so we said out of the 10%, 93% of those will get a third.
Right. And that's just a big red flag for anybody that's already got a second one.
Yeah.
Present company.
No, my hands
included.
raised. Yeah.
It's just one of those things. And again, most of my clients, I remember one of my very first clients, when he got cuffed, he said that changed his life forever. And he worked for the railroad at the time. And when he got cuffed and he was at another person's mercy, he was never going to touch it again.
All right, Kelly, let me ask you a question. Why should somebody be represented by a lawyer if they've been charged with driving while under the influence?
We haven't talked about all the things that go with a DUI, but they're all pretty drastic. If you don't get an attorney on it and there is a weakness in the case, you're not going to find it. An attorney can help negotiate the case, and they can leverage something that they find in the case that can result in it being dismissed or reduced down to something that's not going to cost you your license, insurance, jail time, all of those things that we've talked about before.
I think, when I think about it, different professions have different languages and ways they speak. They call mine psychobabble, right?
They call mine BS.
Yeah, there we go. And there's the whole language of the law. And I think that having an attorney most likely feels like you have an advocate, somebody who speaks the language of the court and what's going on and knows what those ramifications are, because I think just like Casey's situation and other people I know, they don't really know what they're in for, know how to negotiate that. Would you say that's true?
Definitely. You've got to know what's going on in the system, what's going on with the prosecutor, with the judge, what's going to happen in court.
What the possibilities are.
What all the possibilities are, and what are the best for you that an attorney can help you find.
Because as we talked, sometimes a DUI, it's life-altering, and your profession that you've worked so hard your whole life to do can no longer be an avenue for you to make money because of a DUI on your record.
And hopefully the life-altering is that you make the change in your life.
Of course.
So, and otherwise, you've got damage that may be there till the day you die, actually. It'd be the end of a marriage. You could lose a job.
Check.
Yeah.
And these things will show up on a person's record that an employer can check. Is that right?
Yes.
All right, so jail or rehab. When I got my DUI, I ended up going to rehab. I did a detox center for 7 days and then inpatient facility for 45 days. And when I went before the judge, in lieu of jail time, he suspended it because I was in the rehab facility. And I was talking to my lawyer, Kelly Cardon, here, and for me, I felt that was the best use of the time for me because it seemed to put me on a path. And I don't know how well I would have done in jail, but what is your thoughts on jail versus rehab?
Well, the base of all my thoughts is that rehab is always going to be a better solution. Again, if you get somewhere down the road and there's an issue to the public, a danger to the public, then maybe jail is going to be a better situation. But that's usually somebody that's on their 4th or 5th or 6th DUI. They're not learning their lesson. But rehabbing, the rehab you went through was about as strong a rehab that you can get into, and you, in a very good way, took advantage of that.
And I think there's a lot of people that need to know that that's an option. I think a lot of times, as we talked earlier, why would you have a lawyer representing you? Because he's going to be able to give you these options to give you the best outcome that you deserve.
Well, and sometimes I have clients that are reluctant, and that's the first thing I tell them. Look, a judge is going to look kindly upon you if you get yourself in counseling and if you successfully complete it. And you're going to get me a letter when you do complete it telling us all, including the judge, how you did. And it's not just the judge, it's the prosecutor too. So those kind of things are critical, especially in a repeat situation.
In your experience, Kelly, how often do you see people like Casey's situation where they go into rehab and then they don't become, a second, third, fourth offender? Does that seem to make a difference, or do you feel like sitting in jail, people really sober up and learn their lesson? Do you see a difference?
I see a huge difference. Typically, and some people lose their jobs because they do have to go sit in jail because they don't always get work release. You don't get work release here in Salt Lake. So, and then you lose your job. Now, if you had a reason to drink before, you've got double the reason to drink now.
So you see those life stressors really increase when a person is in jail, not getting treatment, and then they're losing things like their job. And you mentioned earlier marriages. How often does this negatively impact marital relationships and things like that?
It happens a lot, but domestic issues cause more DUIs than they actually do.
Yeah, they probably, the DUI doesn't help it if there's already a domestic issue there, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And I will say, just from the psychology point of view, if we look at research and we look at what are called outcome studies over time, how do people do? There may be a reason in society why we would say a person needs a punishment like jail time. But if we really want to change a person's life and get them sober and engaging in healthy behaviors like not drinking and driving, people who complete, not just attend, but complete an appropriate certified type of rehab have much better long-term outcomes. And that's what the research shows. So, I certainly am an advocate of an attorney helping somebody in that situation find and even understand. I think a lot of people may not even realize that they have the option to go in and request going to rehab versus their jail time. If you were doing that without an attorney, I don't know that that would be one of those things we don't know how to do on our own.
You're listening to Project Recovery. We'll be back in a few seconds. Well, there's certain things out there like that I had no idea, and I've said this before on the podcast. After I got the DUI, I sat down with management here at Bonneville Communications and KSL, and they came to me and they said, hey, had you come to us before and said you have a problem, we would have done it together and put you in there, and you would have still had your job. And I had no idea. I didn't know I had any idea that if I went to my employer and said, listen, I'm broken, I'm confused, I'm scared, I'm lost, I don't know what to do. I didn't know if you'd look at me and go, well, we don't want you working here.
I think a lot of people would be worried about that.
Yeah, there's a stigma now. Are you going to speak with hushed tones every time I'm around? Or, hey, look, when we're going to dinners for clients, make sure there's no alcohol. You know what I mean? I didn't want to be treated with white gloves in that. And then I come to find out there's something, and I hope I say this right, it's the FMLA Act. Is that the Family Act? Is that if you do this, a lot of corporations, a lot of companies are obligated to do this, to help you out and get the help and so
it's a measure of prevention, right?
Yes.
We're now, and I like that where we have these opportunities to get in and do prevention instead of just punishment after a person's already caused problems.
Well, yeah, and then there's the aspect that a lot of times the first time around, nobody thinks they do have a problem. They think, that was just that one time. Next thing you know, they're back to their old habits, which have got to be changed, and they're often changed by counseling and treatment. And the other part of that is that I witnessed with you is you didn't really understand the issue that you had.
No.
Once you got out of your counseling, you were 180 degrees in the other direction.
But I think you're right. I think, after the first one, you think, well, this was a mistake. This was, I messed up. I don't have a problem. I'm going to be good. And then you hoe the road for a certain amount of time, and then, it slips right back into it. And you go, how did I get here again? And it's because you didn't do any self-introspection. You didn't address the problem. You just put a Band-Aid over it for a little while, and you never really took it serious.
Yeah, and it's changing your habits. I mean, you've got to change those habits. If you're used to going to the bar, again, what I referenced before, divorce situation, a lot of times people don't stay home anymore. They're split up. Guys moved into an apartment. She's moved into an apartment. They wind up going to the bar to kill time before they go to bed that night. And that's where that issue comes in. I mean, I see more of my ex-clients in bars and I always talk to them, what are you doing here? Oh, yeah. I'm okay.
Yeah. Well, I think that one of the main messages I think that Kelly is trying to put across is, the law is there for a purpose. There are some people that maybe need to be removed from that ability to drive, and jail might be appropriate. But early on in this process, the first or second time you've had a problem with this, we have a much better outcome for that person and all the people that they're around. I mean, even think of it from an employer standpoint. It's much more expensive to have to go out and replace your employees. So being supportive of them in this is great, giving them time to go to rehab versus if they're in jail. You don't know that you're going to have such a good employee when they come back. They may just be more upset, more stressed out. And so I think it's really great for our listeners to understand that there are these options, and an attorney is probably the person that knows how to speak that language and find out what your options really are because, I don't know, Casey didn't know. I don't think I would know. And I hope that our listeners now understand that's an opportunity to get in, find that, I like your term, self-introspection, kind of realize I do have a problem. Maybe I am drinking because I'm lonely or I'm stressed, using other substances that are impairing my driving, and get some tools to avoid that becoming a bigger problem.
All right. Now, Kelly, before we let you go, I do want to talk about this system that the Weber County area has because as we talked about, I'm not going to have a license until October 3rd, 2020. I know the date. I've got a chain around my house that I'm taking one off every day. But
I'm going to get one too, so they'll know when I don't have to give you rides anymore.
Right. But the reality is that, there's a lot more places that I need to be mandated by the court. It's a lot harder for me, so I can see why people would drive on suspended licenses or revoked licenses. And the system seems flawed. It's the system we have, but it seems flawed. But Weber County is doing something different. It's the 24/7. What is that?
It's a program that the legislature established for the first time about 3 years ago. They allotted money for it. We tried to get it put, and so this thing they have up there right now is a pilot program, and they gave it to Weber County 2 years ago. They could not get over some of the humps, the problems that were in it. So we did get it instituted. I was actually on the committee last July, got it up and running. It's been running ever since. 24/7, you have to show up in the morning and in the evening to blow. And if they think there's drugs on board too, they'll draw blood at that point. If you fail to show, it's considered a positive, as you already know.
Yeah.
And if you're in it for a certain period of time and you don't have any positives, then they cut down the number of times that you have to show up. And so they'll work around time you have to be to work. They'll work around time you get off work. But it's a good program. We've made a lot of modifications to it in the last 6 months. Still needs some modifications done. Doesn't cover people on refusals. Doesn't cover minors. Poor minors. I mean, they never get any help. I mean, how are they going to get around? Their parents. The parents are the ones that wind up driving them around when they can't drive anymore. So anyway, it's a good program, and hopefully we'll take it statewide because it's a good option. Because I think there's 8 states that started up in North Dakota because they don't have any mass transportation in North Dakota. And usually if you follow the states that picked it up, South Dakota, Montana, Oregon, it really started up in rural Oregon. They've all got that program, and their success rate on it is about 98%.
Wow.
That's amazing because, after you're done with court and the judge puts down the gavel, they say, we want you to become a productive member of society. We want you to get back into society. And it's tough when you're handcuffed to your house.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you want to get your job and you want to get, your trust back and all that stuff, but you're really not given the...
It's really tough.
Yeah.
It sounds like this program gives people an opportunity. Really, from a behavioral standpoint, it's rewarding them for doing what the court is asking them to do, which is drink responsibly or stop drinking, don't drink and drive, stay sober, and they're getting rewarded by showing up twice a day. Is that how you would put it? Yeah.
And it's an opportunity for them to prove themselves.
Yeah. For somebody who wants to take it seriously and it's outside of work hours. I noticed you said that, which helps, right?
Yes. So it's an ongoing motivation every day, morning, evening.
Yeah.
Stay clean. So
now let me ask you kind of I know we're getting close to the end of our time, but this may be kind of the opposite of how we've been talking today. Kelly, from your point of view, how do you think getting a DUI helps a person? We've talked about the system has some flaws in it, sets us up to fail. I get that. It's kind of clear. This 24/7 program is trying to help with that, and other states have been successful. So we certainly need to do that. But what if we flipped it around and tried to look at, is there anything positive that you've seen for your clients when they get a DUI?
Yeah, I've seen, 4 out of 5 clients never repeat again. So it really is a slap in the face for that. Mm-hmm. I think that's a positive, even though it's a negative resulting in a positive. And most clients...
It shocks them into
it does.
Sobriety.
And they've got a lot at risk. Mm-hmm. Their job, sometimes their marriage, their family, their friends. I mean, there's a whole lot of stigma that rolls with a DUI. And everybody's aware of that.
Yeah. Casey's a little bit unusual in the fact that he's going on the air and talking about this, which I think is great. But most people I know that are struggling with these sorts of things, they want to keep it very
you don't lead with that.
Right.
But, I also, before we let you go, Kelly, I think we've spent a lot of time on a DUI and alcohol-based DUI. But the reality is opioids and a lot of other stuff is really on the rise. Is that not correct?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the numbers of non-alcohol DUIs has exploded in the last 5 or 6 years, including marijuana, THC, cannabis DUIs, all the prescribed meds. Honestly, 12, 13 years ago, officers never even checked for pharmaceuticals. Never did it. Oh, you got a script for your opioid? So go on down the road. Now, if you volunteer and say, yeah, I have a script for it, they're going to check for it. They're going to run a blood on you. They know what to look for then. Oh. So honestly, never volunteer that information to an officer. Okay. But it's changed dramatically now.
And why do you think? Is that just awareness on the legal side of it, the police, or is this a new problem for people?
Well, it's almost like police didn't know that CNS prescriptions could affect somebody's agility to drive a car or to safely drive a car.
Yeah.
They do now, and they're looking for it all the time.
And there's been a huge awareness. It's an old problem. It's not a new problem, but our awareness of the opioid epidemic, which is what it's referred to now, that is very impairing of a person's judgment, ability to work, and of course, operate something like a car.
Oh yeah, and I don't know. We have a metabolite law that even if you have the metabolite of a controlled substance in your system, including marijuana, and a metabolite means that it's not pharmaceutically active, so it's not even impairing your driving, but that statute is on the same level in terms of punishment, commitments, everything else, as a DUI or impaired driving. And it's driving with the metabolite of a controlled substance in your system. So a lot of marijuana cases are coming in under that umbrella.
Have you seen a increase in DUIs with the new .05 law here in Utah?
You know, I've gotten 2 now, and we're 2.5 months into it. So not a lot yet.
Not yet. Okay.
All right. Hey, Kelly, thank you very much for your time. If people want to find out information about you, where's the best place to go?
On the web.
Which website?
KellyCardonLaw.com.
All right. Hey, remember, if you're going to drink, don't drive. Thanks for listening. Hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to tell a friend. See you next time.